The moment I opened the door to my room, the smell of damp carpet and lemon-scented cleaning spray hit me like a memory I didn't want to revisit. The wallpaper peeled at the corners, the ceiling fan hummed a lazy, uneven rhythm, and the single window faced a brick wall. Of course. Out of all the suites in this five-star resort, my family somehow decided this was mine. "Hope you don't mind the small one, Harper," my mother had said earlier, her tone as light as her diamond earrings. "You've always been low maintenance." I smiled, the way I always do when I'm biting back words. "It's perfect," I'd said, sliding my designer duffel onto the creaky bed. They didn't notice the quiet irony in my voice. Outside the narrow window, I could see the reflection of the ocean glimmering from the lobby's glass panels. I designed those panels myself, chose that very tint to catch the sunset just right. My fingers grazed the smooth brass doorknob, the same custom finish I'd approved 2 years ago. Every inch of this hotel whispered me. But they didn't know that. Not my parents. Not my brother. Not the cousins who'd laughed when I told them years ago that I'd figure life out my own way. The family reunion had barely begun, and already, the universe was handing me a front-row seat to irony. Because tonight, they'd all sleep soundly, completely unaware that the worst room they'd given me belonged to the woman who owned the entire hotel. I was 23 when I realized my family loved success more than they loved people. It was Thanksgiving, and the house smelled like rosemary and expensive disappointment. My brother, Dylan, had just landed a job at a top investment firm in New York, and my parents beamed at him like he discovered fire. When it was my turn to share news, I mentioned I'd quit my corporate assistant job to take a position at a small boutique hotel in Santa Monica. The silence that followed could have been bottled and sold as awkward tension. My father finally sighed, carving the turkey a little too hard. "A hotel clerk, Harper? You went to college for this." My mother smiled the way polite women do when they're disappointed. "It's temporary, right, sweetheart? You'll find something real soon." The words stung more than I'd admit. I remember my fingers tightening around the edge of my napkin, the fabric twisting like my insides. I wanted to tell them it wasn't just a job, it was a beginning. I loved the rhythm of hospitality, the way each day offered new people, new stories. But in their world, service meant servitude. Later that night, when the laughter faded and the dishes were done, I sat outside on the back porch with my grandmother, June. She'd always been the only one who saw through me. She handed me a mug of cocoa and said, "You've got their fire, Harper. You just choose to build with it instead of burn." I remember her taking off a small gold key charm from her necklace and pressing it into my palm. "You'll have doors slammed on you, baby. But don't you forget, you were born to build your own." I still carry that key. A week later, I packed my bags and left home. No dramatic farewell, no tears, just a quiet promise to myself that I'd make something of my own. I worked every shift I could get. Mornings at the front desk, nights handling guest complaints, weekends cleaning rooms when we were short-staffed. I learned everything. How to read people, how to fix problems before they existed, how to smile even when I was breaking inside. And with every guest I greeted, every room I turned over, I whispered a silent vow. One day, I won't just work in a hotel. I'll own one. Starting over felt like standing barefoot on cold marble, beautiful but merciless. In Santa Monica, I lived in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled faintly of coffee and ocean salt. My life revolved around the hotel, 12-hour shifts, aching feet, and learning how to keep my smile steady even when guests snapped their fingers or called me sweetheart. But beneath the exhaustion, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: purpose. I studied everything: how lighting affected mood, how scent could elevate an experience, how single greeting could change a guest's entire stay. My manager, Renee, noticed. She was a former executive who'd worked her way up the hard way, sharp, elegant, and unapologetically kind. She used to say, "The best revenge in life, Harper, is excellence served quietly." Renee became my mentor. She taught me to see beyond the lobby, to understand the heartbeat of a business. Under her guidance, I took courses in hotel management, accounting, and design. I spent late nights scribbling notes in a secondhand journal, dreaming of something bigger. When the hotel chain went through financial trouble, Renee confided in me before the layoffs hit. "You're good, Harper. But good won't save you. Brave will." She offered me a contact in Nevada, a friend who ran a struggling resort near Lake Tahoe. It was a risk. I left behind my small safety net and drove 8 hours with everything I owned in the back seat of my old Honda. The resort was failing: broken elevators, leaky roofs, tired decor. But I saw potential. I offered to work double shifts in exchange for a chance to manage one wing. Within months, occupancy went up. Guests started leaving positive reviews mentioning my name. That was the first time I felt powerful. Not rich, powerful. A year later, when an investor approached me about a new project, a hotel rebrand in Oregon, I said yes. I poured every dollar, every ounce of experience into it. I barely slept. There were nights I cried in the stairwell, wondering if I was out of my depth. But every time I wanted to quit, I'd take out that little gold key and remind myself, build your own door. The Oregon project succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. From there, word spread. I was offered partnerships, consulting opportunities, and eventually, a chance to co-own my own property. I made my first million before 30, though no one in my family knew. On social media, I kept things vague: a few beach photos, a post about work travel. My parents still thought I managed a small hotel somewhere out west. I never corrected them, because some truths, I decided, are best revealed when the timing is poetic. So when I was asked to host a new family reunion at one of our luxury coastal properties, my property, I didn't hesitate. I just smiled and said, "That sounds perfect." The first morning of the family trip began like any other. Laughter in the hallway, the smell of freshly brewed coffee drifting up from the lobby, and my mother's voice echoing from the suite next door. She was scolding the concierge about the pool temperature. I stood by the window of my so-called worst room, watching waves break against the shore. Even now, the view is stunning: soft light dancing on turquoise water, the horizon stretching like a promise I had kept to myself. A knock came. It was my cousin, Lila, dressed in a sundress that looked like it cost half my first paycheck years ago. "Breakfast's ready." "Mom said to hurry before the buffet closes," she said, wrinkling her nose as she peeked into my room. "Wow, they really stuck you with this one, huh?" I smiled faintly. "Seems that way." Downstairs, the family gathered around a long table overlooking the ocean. Waiters moved gracefully around them, pouring mimosas and setting down plates with delicate precision. I watched as my brother Dylan leaned back in his chair, bragging about a new client. My parents nodded proudly, while my mother complained about her stuffy suite on the executive floor. "They charged us extra for an ocean view," she sighed. "Honestly, this place better be worth it." I bit my lip to stop the laugh that threatened to escape. Worth it? If only she knew. When the hotel manager approached, tall, polished, discreet, he gave me a knowing glance. "Miss James," he said softly, "the meeting room is ready whenever you are." I nodded, catching the curious stares from my family. My father raised a brow. "Meeting room? Just some work stuff," I said casually. "Won't take long." Of course, they followed me anyway. Curiosity always had a way of guiding them where respect wouldn't. We entered the grand suite reserved for VIP clients. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Pacific like a painting, sunlight spilling across the marble floor. The air smelled faintly of sandalwood and sea salt, my signature blend. The walls were adorned with modern art I'd personally commissioned, each piece representing a phase of my journey. Dylan whistled. "Wow, fancy. Whoever owns this place must be rolling in it." I turned slowly, the ocean glinting behind me. "You could say that." My father crossed his arms. "You said this was work. What exactly do you do here, Harper?" I paused, feeling the stillness thicken. This was the moment. All those years of silence, all the condescending smiles, all the maybe someday-s, they led to this. "I run it," I said evenly. "Actually, I own it." The room fell quiet. My mother blinked, her mimosa glass frozen midair. "What do you mean, you own it?" I mean this hotel. The Ocean Crest Resort. Every wall, every window, every room, including the one you thought was the worst. I smiled softly. That's mine. Dylan laughed nervously. You're joking. The manager stepped forward, confirming it with a polite nod. Ms. James is our majority owner and lead designer. Without her, this property wouldn't exist. Their faces shifted, disbelief melting into something raw. My father's jaw tightened. My mother looked between me and the panoramic view, as if trying to calculate how this could be true. I walked to the window, touching the glass with the same reverence I once reserved for dreams. You taught me to chase security, I said quietly, but I chose freedom, and it led me here. No one spoke for a long time. Outside, the ocean roared. Wild, unapologetic, just like the woman they'd underestimated. Silence hung in the air so thick I could almost hear my grandmother's voice echoing through it. Build your own door. My father finally cleared his throat, the sound sharp against the stillness. Harper, he began carefully, why didn't you tell us? I turned to face him, my reflection merging with the ocean behind me. Would you have listened? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. My mother's hand fluttered to her chest, her diamond bracelet catching the light. We thought you were just figuring things out, she said softly. We didn't realize that I already had? I finished for her. No anger in my tone, just truth. The kind that didn't need to be shouted to be heard. Dylan leaned forward, trying to reclaim his usual confidence. So, what now? You own this place, sure, but we're still family. Can't we just? Family, I interrupted gently, means seeing each other as equals. Not projects. Not disappointments. Equals. They all went quiet again. I could see the discomfort in their faces, the realization that their hierarchy had just collapsed. I took a slow breath, walking toward the table where fresh fruit and pastries had been set for the meeting. My fingers brushed the rim of a porcelain plate, imported from Italy, chosen by me. Here's what I want, I said finally. Not an apology. Not even validation. Just change. My mother frowned slightly. Change? Yes. I looked at each of them in turn. Dad, I want you to stop measuring worth by titles and income. Start asking people what makes them happy, not what they do for a living. Mom, stop hiding behind control. Let yourself be human. Vulnerable. It's not weakness. Her eyes glistened, and for the first time, she didn't look polished. She looked real. And Dylan, I said, turning to my brother, you're talented, but you hide behind arrogance because you think it protects you. It doesn't. Let people see your heart. It's the best part of you. He swallowed hard, nodding once. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle like dust after a storm. I'll pay for this trip. Every room, every meal, every glass of champagne. It's on me. But when you leave, I want something in return. My father's voice was cautious. What's that? Honesty, I said. Real, uncomfortable, healing honesty. No more pretending. The waves crashed against the shore as if in agreement. For the first time in years, they didn't argue. My mother reached for my hand, tentative but sincere. You've grown into someone I barely recognize, Harper. But I think that's a good thing. I smiled, not out of pride, but peace. I'm still me, Mom. Just the version you stopped believing in. By the last night of the trip, the atmosphere had shifted. Breakfasts were calmer, conversations warmer. Dylan actually asked me for advice on a client proposal, and my mother laughed at a joke that wasn't about money or appearances. Even my father, usually stoic, paused to notice the subtle glow of the sunset across the lobby. I wandered through the hallways alone for a moment, my heels clicking softly against the marble. Every room told a story, some of ambition, some of struggle, all of growth. I paused by the small plaque outside the executive suite. Owner, Harper James. I traced the letters with a finger, feeling the weight of years spent proving myself, quietly, patiently. The little gold key from my grandmother rested in my palm. Its smooth edges reminded me of that night on the back porch, of her words. Doors will be slammed, but you'll build your own.
I had.
I really had. Later, we gathered in the hotel's rooftop lounge, overlooking the endless blue of the Pacific. Candles flickered on the tables, casting soft shadows over my family's faces. They weren't perfect. They were human. Flawed, stubborn, sometimes misguided, but slowly, they were learning to meet me on my level. I lifted my glass of champagne and smiled, a mixture of relief and quiet triumph filling me. To growth, I said softly, so only they could hear, for all of us. And in that moment, I realized the journey wasn't about revenge or proving them wrong. It was about becoming the woman I was meant to be, strong, independent, graceful, and unapologetically in control of my life. I let my gaze drift back to the horizon. Waves still crashed with the same wild rhythm, but I was no longer fighting against the tide. I had built my empire, owned my truth, and opened doors that no one could close. And as I felt the breeze on my face, I whispered to myself, quietly, like a closing voiceover. They gave me the smallest room, not knowing I'd already built the whole house.